Morning, everyone. Tema Journal, Prisma Journal Club. My moderator is Dr. Shobhit sir, and the topic of presentation is and the topic is evidence for network-based cortical thickness reductions in schizophrenia. So, principal author is Cassandra M. Javanan. Publication is through the American Journal of Psychiatry. Publication was on June 5, 2019, and it was supported by the Cooperative Research Center (CRC) for Mental Health, an Australian government initiative. So the American Journal of Psychiatry is the most widely read psychiatric journal in the world and is the official journal of the American Psychiatric Association. The first volume was issued in 1844, at which time it was known as the American Journal of Insanity. The title changed to the current form with July issue of 1921. Published monthly, it is an indispensable journal for all psychiatrists and other mental health professionals who need to stay on the cutting edge of what they respect of psychiatry. The editor-in-chief is Ned H. Callan, and latest impact factor is 17.6. So, cortical thickness reductions are a consistent finding in schizophrenia. However, heterogeneity is evident between studies in terms of the extent of these reductions and the regions affected. The heterogeneity may be related to factors such as illness chronicity, symptom severity, or response to medications. So, individuals with first episode psychosis demonstrate subtle cortical thickness reductions with changes most consistently observed in prefrontal and temporal regions. In chronic schizophrenia, cortical thickness reductions are more widespread, with pronounced reductions in frontal and temporal lobes and evidence of reduction in the parietal and occipital cortices. And in treatment-resistant schizophrenia, there is widespread cortical thickness reductions. So the need for study, cortical thickness reductions across these illness stages are irregularly distributed across multiple loci. For example, while frontal and temporal regions exhibit pronounced cortical thickness reductions, the specific loci affected are distinct from each other, resulting in patterns of thinning that appear sporadically distributed across the cortex. Therefore, progressive thinning, which has been observed in first episode psychosis, chronic schizophrenia, and treatment-resistant schizophrenia, cannot be explained by spatial proximity to putative pathological epicenters. So the aim is to explain the irregular cortical topography of cortical thickness reductions in schizophrenia, and the authors hypothesized that cortical connectivity networks would explain the distribution of cortical thickness reductions across the cortex, and specifically that cortico-cortical connectivity between loci with these reductions would be exceptionally strong and form an interconnected network. So the inclusion criteria, the neuroimaging data were obtained for 70 patients with first episode psychosis, 153 with chronic schizophrenia, and 47 patients with resistant schizophrenia, and for healthy control subjects corresponding with each of the three schizophrenia cohorts on the basis of age in years, current IQ, pre-morbid IQ, positive symptoms according to DIP and PANSS, negative symptoms according to SANS and PANSS, illness duration in years, mean cortical thickness on MRI, and total antipsychotic dose of chlorpromazine equivalent. Explain the statement. So these are the demographic characteristics of the patients they have taken in control groups and the cohort we had. So the mean values. There's a mean value of all. Findings also. Yes, sir. So the mean age for the first patient cohort for the first episode psychosis for males was 21. So standard deviation plus minus 3 standard deviations. And so for the healthy control group, they took 34 patients in first episode psychosis, male patients. And so mean age was 21 and standard deviation was plus minus 3.6. And so for chronic schizophrenia, mean age for males was 38 and for healthy control group it was 39. So plus minus standard deviation. You've explained a table, you've explained what does this table show? So, what are the various characteristics this table show? What are the findings of this table? You not read each and every value. So the findings are they took 3 cohorts, first episode, chronic schizophrenia, treatment-resistant schizophrenia, and they took 3 healthy controls corresponding to each of these groups on the basis of age, current IQ, pre-morbid IQ, positive symptoms according to DIP and PANSS, negative symptoms according to SANS and PANSS, illness duration in years, mean cortical thickness, and total antipsychotic dose to clofazimine equivalent.
So what is the finding of this table? तो हमने समझा दिया फाइंडिंग क्या है इस टेबल की, दिख तो रहा है वो p वैल्यू डबल स्टार दिख रहा है?
Yes.
एक्सप्लेन करना है current IQ, pre-morbid IQ. There is a significant difference in both the groups between patients cohort and healthy control groups among the three populations. Similar finding you get in mean cortical thickness. That's it. Thank you.
Inclusion criteria was not mentioned. Materials and methods. Participants were chosen as described earlier. Image data acquisition was done using established MRI protocols. Image processing and cortical thickness estimation was processed with free surfer software package. Demographic differences between the three patient groups and the three respective control groups were tested using t-tests for continuous variables and chi-square test of independence for categorical variables. So it was done under three parameters. First is cortical thickness differences. The null hypothesis of equality in cortical thickness between three patient groups and the three respective control groups was tested independently for each of the 148 cortical regions. To correct for multiple comparisons, the false discovery rate was controlled at 5% using the Benjamin-Hodgkin procedure. The false discovery rate is the rate that features called significant are truly null. An FDR of 5% means that amongst all features that are called significant, 5% are truly null. The second parameter was whole brain structural covariance analysis. The structural covariance refers to the relation between the morphology of one brain region to that of the another region across study subjects. This method is based on the assumption that inter-individual differences in morphology co-vary between pairs of regions that are structurally and functionally connected. In this study, cortical thickness served as a morphological measure, and Pearson correlation was used to compute structural covariance. Pearson correlation measures linear correlation between two sets of data. To improve normality, the R to Z transformation was applied to all correlation coefficients. R to Z transformation means transformation of skewed data to normal distribution code. This yielded a separate connectivity matrix for each of the three patient groups and the respective control groups that quantified the connectivity strength between all paired regions. The third parameter was structural covariance between regions with cortical thickness reductions. Permutation testing was used to establish whether structural covariance was significantly stronger or weaker between regions with cortical thickness reductions compared with randomly selected group of regions. Testing was performed for three separate cases: structural covariance measured in each of the three patient groups, structural covariance measured in respective healthy control groups, and the difference in structural covariance between the patient and the healthy control groups. Foremost regions were ranked from highest to lowest according to the severity of cortical thickness reductions. The mean structural covariance between the top n regions with the most extensive cortical thickness reduction was then computed. So here on the x-axis, we have the number of cortical regions, and on the y, we have the structural covariance. This shaded blue area is the 95% confidence interval. The results, the demographic characteristics, age did not significantly differ between the patient and the control groups. Gender composition did not differ between groups for the first episode psychosis and treatment-resistant cohorts. However, the chronic schizophrenia cohort comprised significantly fewer females compared with their respective control group. Patients with treatment-resistant schizophrenia had significantly greater negative symptoms than patients with chronic schizophrenia. And all three patient groups demonstrated significant impairments on measures of current and pre-morbid IQ. The findings according to the three parameters we took. First is cortical thickness reductions. Compared with the healthy control subjects, a total of 34, 79, and 106 regions were found to show significant cortical thickness reduction in the first episode psychosis, chronic schizophrenia, and treatment-resistant schizophrenia groups respectively. Increased cortical thickness was not evident in any of the three patient cohort. In chronic and treatment-resistant schizophrenia, regions with most extensive reductions were located in the frontal and temporal lobes, as well as in the insula and cingulate cortex, although posterior regions also showed evidence of reduction in treatment-resistant schizophrenia. First episode psychosis was associated with a more distributed pattern of cortical thickness reduction, and it was found that the number of regions with significant reductions and the mean effect sizes across these regions were ordered according to disease severity. So here for the colored regions, the null hypothesis was rejected, meaning that these areas showed significant cortical thickness reductions on the study findings. and the bar represents, the colored bar represents the T-scores, that is the standard deviation. So the second is whole brain structural covariance. The null hypothesis of equality in structural covariance between the patient and the control groups was rejected for the first episode psychosis cohort, meaning when we look at the brain wholly, there was no significant reduction of cortical thickness between the healthy control and the patient with first episode psychosis, and the null hypothesis could not be rejected for the chronic and treatment-resistant cohorts. Now, structural covariance between regions with cortical thickness reductions. The study next sought to establish with permutation testing whether structural covariance was increased among regions with cortical thickness reductions. For each of the three cohorts, structural covariance was significantly increased among regions with cortical thickness reductions. This was irrespective of whether structural covariance was measured in the patient or the healthy control group. Meaning, cortical regions susceptible to thickness reduction in schizophrenia were interconnected more strongly than arbitrarily chosen regions, both in the general population and across different schizophrenia subtypes. In the final analysis, the between group differences in structural covariance between regions with thickness reduction was investigated. Structural covariance in the chronic and treatment-resistant cohorts was significantly stronger between regions with reductions when compared with healthy control subjects. Conversely, the patient with first episode psychosis is significantly weaker structural covariance than the respective healthy control group, regions with thickness reductions, meaning that the null hypothesis was rejected for the whole brain structural covariance. The structural covariance between thinned cortical regions was found to increase with increasing illness severity among patients compared with healthy control subjects. Now, supplementary analysis. In supplementary analysis, 81 regions were found to have significant cortical thickness reductions in at least 2 of the 3 cohorts. This level of overlap could not be attributed to chance. To evaluate the impact of variation in sample size across the cohorts, 5 subsamples were randomly drawn from the largest cohort. Structural covariance among regions with cortical thickness reductions was highly consistent between the full sample and each random sample, meaning that inter-cohort sample size variation did not introduce bias. So it was found that structural covariance was significantly increased among regions with most extensive thickness reductions, irrespective of whether it was measured in patients or healthy control subjects, suggesting that cortico-cortical connectivity can provide an explanation for the irregular topographic distribution of thickness reductions across the cortex. This increase in structural covariance was observed only when analysis was constrained to regions in which thickness reductions were present, with no difference in average whole brain structural covariance observed between patients and healthy control subjects. The finding of increased structural covariance suggests that regions that are affected in patients are part of networks that are present in healthy individuals. Thus, it was posited that the cortical topography of thickness reduction in schizophrenia is shaped by network topology. Here, topography refers to the spatial arrangement of cortical regions on the cortical surface, whereas topology refers to the patterns of connectivity between these regions.
Lastly,
So it was posited that the cortical topography of thickness reductions in schizophrenia is shaped by network topology, meaning that the interconnected networks are responsible for the trophy, cortical thickness reductions. So this provides an explanation for why the distribution of thickness reductions in the cortical surface is irregular and not contiguous, supposing that these reductions are shaped by connections that can interconnect distant regions. In some degenerative brain disorders, unaffected regions at greater risk of future atrophy are directly connected to atrophied regions by white matter fiber bundles. This suggests that white matter may inauspiciously facilitate proliferation of pathological processes through transneuronal or transsynaptic split. So the strengths of the study were that the findings were reproducible across 3 different independent schizophrenia cohorts, including the robustness of the findings. The research was transparent, and the findings were further corroborated by other studies done by various researchers. Limitations. A noteworthy limitation of this study was its cross-sectional design. Given that cortical thickness reductions increase with illness duration and severity, this requires confirmation of the longitudinal sample. Second, it was also impossible in the study to determine whether apparent cortical thickness reductions may actually have been the result of variations in the microstructural properties of the brain tissue, including myelination, iron, and water content across cohorts. And quantitative evaluation of the impact of disease severity on the relation between connectivity and cortical thickness was not done, because this would have required combining MRI data that were acquired with different scanners and processed with different free-server versions, thereby introducing several potential confounders. And inconsistencies in symptom and medication data across cohorts and lack of antipsychotic dosage information for the chronic schizophrenia cohort also made it difficult to compare these measures across groups and to assess their influence on cortical thickness reductions.
Questions, comments, clarification? Can you summarize?
Yes. So as we all know that the cortical thickness reduction in the trophy in schizophrenia is heterogeneous. It is not continuous. So here in this study, they finally posited that we have network connections in the brain. So the interconnected regions are at greater risk of atrophy. So that can explain the sporadic distribution or heterogeneous distribution of atrophy. So spread is not
So what, how they came to this finding? How they come to this finding? What they ultimately did in all these three groups?
So first, they acquired the thickness reductions to the MRI standard MRI protocols. So then they so then they so like हमारे three groups थे. The first episode psychosis and the healthy control group. So it did not show any significant reductions. Answer. Um,
So any questions, comments, clarifications?
functional. हाँ, तो that is when we look at the whole brain, when we look at the brain structurally, so there is the null hypothesis for that was rejected. Uh, Functionally connected data is yes. No, the areas which are functionally connected, network wise connected, interconnected.
How many of you have read this journal? Ravijit, you read? Mankaran, Udasana, Ayushi, Vinito, Dr. Abhishri. जल्दी अपने जर्नल पढ़ के नहीं आएंगे तो फिर कैसे हम डिस्कस कर पाएंगे जर्नल उसमें फिर यू आर सपोज्ड टू रीड द जर्नल एंड कम otherwise you will not understand much and that is why we deliberately chose this difficult journal कि then सबको पकड़ लिया जाएगा नहीं पकड़ के आए उनको तो समझ नहीं आएगा or every journal you're supposed to read the journal probably a day before go through it whatever you're able to understand fine not able to understand then you have to come and ask your queries. It is not an unidirectional process. General labs are supposed to be discussed. The statistics is supposed to be discussed. She tried to discuss a couple of statistics. She tried to discuss a couple of concepts like typology, topography, which is important. But अगर आप लोग पढ़ के नहीं आएंगे, तो I think जनरल क्लास करने का फायदा क्या है? रूपाली, वो एकेडमिक नेक्स्ट उसका क्या होगा? The academics are supposed to be conducted for the residents, no? And everyone is supposed to read journal clubs. Journal. Who is the editor of Indian Journal of Psychiatry? Who is the editor? Rajit? I don't know. Now, Mangal, Nitu, anyone? दिखाया था तुमने? हाँ? तो रिव्यू दिखाया था? ये impact factor क्या होता है? What is the impact factor? 17.7 is the impact factor of American Journal of Psychiatry. What do you mean by that? मतलब मतलब Citation of a journal 17.7 cases data निकलेगा of the article. Every article has been cited by how many other articles? So imagine each and every publication of American Journal of Psychiatry, each and every publication of there is cited by 70 other publications. Such a reputed journal. One day we dream that we may publish something with psychiatry. We haven't done till now. It's a very reputed journal. This biological psychiatry. These are one of the premium journals in psychiatry. But the whole construct is first you have to understand yourself, the in and out of what you're presenting. Then only the clarity of presentation will come. Okay, that is you tried your level best. You can do it. Kind of general, but I think you go back again, read it. Then I hope everyone. When is the next journal club? Next month. Yeah, and I think we'll have a journey from American Journal of Psychiatry. Okay, you can come. And critical, this is your critique or you take it to journal only? Where is your critique? Did they define chronic schizophrenia? Why? How did they differentiate chronic schizophrenia from resistant schizophrenia? If reductions are the parameters of illness duration, so chronic and resistance, whether duration was different or not? Did they differentiate that? Did they took into their account? Because chronic and resistant schizophrenia might be overlapping. The cycle is very clear cut. Any age criteria did they take? Age specific criteria? Any age?
So they, yes, sir.
But they compared mean age.
Yeah, mean age. Yes.
मीन एज में इनको कोई फर्क नहीं नजर आया.
I did not.
They did discuss. Maybe they wanted कि अगर IQ की कोई एक defining variable होगा, which they subsequently did they took IQ in subsequent analysis?
No, sir. In supplementary, sir, demographic characteristics के analysis में सर ने दिया था कि there was significant differences between the pre-morbid and the current IQ between all the three cohorts.
But again, they compared with healthy, definitely आपको IQ ratios तो मिलेंगे. But you see बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. 92, 101, 99, 107, 91, 106. So these are between 90 to 110 के बीच में ही है. So normal उसमें ही आएगा. So again, this has not much meaning, but उन्होंने पहले लिया होगा. But again, and point maybe अगर किसी का subnormal IQ किसी ग्रुप का होगा, उसका cortical reduction ज़्यादा होगा. But they couldn't explain it subsequently. So basically, what they saw is whether these irregular reductions, structural reductions, whether they can be explained by functional connectivities or not. They are saying because it is not following any pattern, so maybe long and short communication fibers in terms of connecting. Connectivity, defining connectivity, they are defining these reductions because they are not following any common hypothesis or any common formula. So that is why it is in variations which are explained by these connectivities, which in itself are very difficult to explain. White fiber tracks का उन्होंने एक possible hypothesis दिया है कि शायद white fiber tracks might be involved. Commissional fiber, short and long, defining these. The reductions of cortical thickness. That is what they proposed at the end. This might be, but they are not definitely. But again, any other questions?
and treatment resistant schizophrenia.
वो slide सही. This is for the exam purpose. This is an important slide. ये पीछे 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 वाला. No, आगे जाइए. आगे जाइए. हाँ, this one. This slide is for your exam purpose. This is an important slide. So frontotemporal lobe reductions and insular and singular cortex reductions in chronic and resistant schizophrenias. First episode psychosis is more or less more uniform pattern of reductions are there. जब वो chronicity में जाते हैं, then it becomes more focal reductions. उसका difference नहीं आया. मैं दिखाऊंगा. So mean and chronic का age ज़्यादा है compared to your first episode psychosis. And you can see main age का standard deviation is 9.44. 9.44 मतलब कि around 45, 46. तो आप कह रहे हैं पर उन्होंने जो कंट्रोल ग्रुप लिया है वो एज मैच लिया. तो उससे कंट्रोल ग्रुप जो मैच किया है उसका इमेज देखो. उससे कंपेयर करा तो उन्होंने उसको लिया है कि वो उस एज अप्रोप्रिएट पॉपुलेशन से करते हैं. इसलिए दे somehow controlled it so that हाँ आप तीनों ग्रुप के बीच में कंपेयर नहीं कर सकते. That becomes a limitation.
So also they are,
तो एज को आप कोविड बना देंगे.
also they hypothesize that the most common for age for post episode psychosis during the adolescence. So that is why there was no significant difference between the healthy controls and the post episode, because the synaptic formation is still under process. The neurons are still forming, and that is why it has more distributed.
But more or less also that the distribution of OP are very uniform in first episode psychosis. तो वो irregularity है नहीं. इसलिए वो उस irregularity नहीं है तो इसलिए healthy control इसमें को बहुत difference नहीं चला है. That might be the reason. उसका mechanism आप बताइए. But I feel कि more clarity should come out. You should be very very clear explaining them each and every. So ऐसे जनरल जब टफ आते हैं तो this becomes an opportunity to learn disconnectivity, connectivity है, तो सबको सारा पढ़ना. Get the hang of it. Then इसके पहले क्या हुआ, इन्होंने जो इंट्रोडक्शन में आर्टिकल्स एस्टैब्लिश किए उनके क्रॉस रेफरेंस जा जाके पढ़ना पड़ता है. तो वहां से आपको पता चलता है कि नहीं, दैट इज व्हाट वी आर डूइंग. ठीक है. ओके, we conclude this session and हम लोग नेक्स्ट हमारा एकेडमिक्स कब है? क्लोजअप इनका कब है? सैटरडे.